Digging around. Digging the ground.
Helo, fi yw Richard Ellis a chroeso i'r podcast yma gan cynllun craff am wastraff. Yn ystod y podcast yma, byddwn yn dweud sut y gallwch chi ddechrau compostio gartref. Wrth gwrs mae yna nifer o resymau da dros wneud hynny, ac un o resymau hynny yw ei fod yn dda i'r amgylchedd. Dyma Becky Fafager o Asiantaeth yr Amgylchedd Cymru.
One of the main ways it will help the environment is because it's going to reduce the amount of biodegradable waste going into the landfill sites. So that's going to reduce the amount or help reduce the amount of greenhouse gases that are produced in landfill sites. And it also means that the waste won't need to be transported from my house to a landfill site. So I'm dealing with the waste where it's being produced.
Diolch, Becky. Mae'n syndod faint o'ch gwastraff sy'n bydradwy. Gwastraff sy'n berffaith ar gyfer ei roi yn eich compost gartref a fydd yn pydru i greu deunydd llawn maith i'w roi yn ôl i'r amgylchedd. Mae compostio hefyd yn golygu y bydd llai o ddeunydd yn cyrraedd safleoedd tirlenwi. Gofynnais i Adrian Jones, swyddog strategaeth gwastraff gyda Llywodraeth Cynulliad Cymru, sut y mae compostio gartref o gymorth mewn perthynas a safleoedd tirlenwi?
That's a very timely question. Just today, the Environment Agency issued a press release on the landfill void space that's available within Wales to us. At the present time, all of the Welsh landfills, if you add up the remaining capacity within them, there's about 5 years' worth of landfill left for the whole of Wales. After such time, our landfills are all going to be full, and we're going to need to look quite seriously at what we do to replace these. Now, there's a whole load of work going on with various local authorities at the moment to provide alternative facilities, and we are trying to move away from landfills generally in order to comply with our waste strategy. What composting will do is divert material from those landfills, thereby reducing the amount of material that goes into landfill, and it will extend the life of the landfills that we have left, which is a good thing, because the longer they last, the longer it is before we have to replace them. And as the amount of waste we produce every year is rising gradually, and I think it will plateau out before long, but it's still a given figure that we have to account for, there's always going to be a role for waste management facilities, and landfills are included within that description. So the longer we can utilise our existing landfills, the better, and home composting is going to help quite dramatically reduce the amount of material that goes to landfill. If you consider that it's between 30 and 40% of the material that's produced by the average householder, if we can remove that from our refuse arisings, then we could feasibly extend the life of those landfill sites accordingly. And this is why home composting will help with the landfill situation. It will also reduce the amount of putrescible material entering landfills, which will in turn reduce the amount of methane that's produced by your average landfill. Methane is quite a potent greenhouse gas. It has 23 times the climate change potential that carbon dioxide has, for example. And even the best run landfill site never captures more than about 80 to 85% of the methane that it produces. So every landfill site that's out there is always leaking small amounts of methane into the atmosphere, and that methane has a disproportionate impact on the climate. So the more we can do to reduce this, the better.
Felly, sut mae dechrau compostio gartref? Wel, yn gyntaf, cysylltwch ag awdurdod lleol oherwydd efallai bydd ganddyn nhw finiau compost wedi ei subsideiddio, neu fe allech alw yn eich canolfan garddio agosaf i weld pa finiau compost sydd ar gael. Yn ôl Becky, does yna ddim byd i atal unrhyw un rhag dechrau compost cartref.
I found it quite easy. I mean, once you've set the bin up, I started with putting a layer of paper on the ground, and really you just got to make sure that the stuff that you're putting in is remaining moist, so it doesn't dry out completely. And you can usually achieve that by, adding a different variety of waste in there. So, for example, in the summer, when I'm mowing the grass all the time, I'm putting a lot of grass clippings into my bin, then I will layer that with newspapers. so it kind of absorbs the excess liquid, and so it's just kind of keeping an eye that you've got a balance of all these different types of material in there, and then every now and again give it a kind of agitation to make sure you're getting enough oxygen into it, and it seems to do fine by itself most of the time.
Mae'n diddorol nodi bod Becky yn rhoi papur dan ei chompost. Mae rai pobl yn rhoi haen o weiren cwt ieir dan ei compost. Mae hyn yn sicrhau mae ond pryfed a mwydod sydd ei hangen arnoch sy'n cael mynediad. Mae'r cynghorydd Richard Parry Hughes yn gwybod yn union sut mae'r cyfan yn gweithio.
Ffordd o'r ydi defnyddio stwff glas, gwethlas, crwyn tatws, crwyn moron, bach yn y blaen, ac cael hwnnw mewn unau bin bach wedi wneud efo pren. Mae eisiau aer ydi mewn iddo fo, a mae eisiau cadw'r glaw allan. A felly mae'n eithriadol o bwysig bod aer yn ei mewn ac bod o'n twmo'n iawn a cael digon o fres i gael y bacteria yn torri lawr yr deunydd glas. Ac wedyn mae hwnnw wedyn yn creu compost dig mewnlyd heb yr rhy lyb, a da chi'n gallu defnyddio hwnnw'n syth.
Mae hynna yn gynhwysfawr iawn, ond a ydyw'n lawer o drafferth.
Wel, fel ffarmwr, dwi wedi bod yn compostio ers blynyddoedd, mae'n egwyddor, hen egwyddor amaethyddol. Lle da chi yn rhoi tail ac allan, carthu'r tail o dan anifeiliaid, dod efo allan, gwytid o dwmo, droi o drosodd, a wedi mynd efo a'i deilo fo i'r cia. Mae hynna'n digwydd yn arferol mewn ffermydd, ac mae'n lot o ffermydd bellach, a beth da ni'n neud acw, mae'r crwyn tatws a crwyn na mynd i mewn i'r tocyn hwnnw dydy gwir lle. Felly mae nhw'n cael ei cymysgu efo yr tail cyffredin. Be sy'n eithriadol o bwysig, bod dwi'n gwneud, ydy cadw yn ein siŵr na ddim ymryn o gig na ddim felly mynd i mewn i'r doman dail na lle.
Diolch, Richard. Felly, i ddechrau compostio, rowch y bin compost mewn rhywle sy'n gyfleus i chi. Byddai'n un awgrymu rhywle sydd ddim yn rhy bell o'r gegin. Yn ddelfrydol, dylech chi osod ar brydd mwyn caniatáu i'r pryfed mwyaf defnyddiol gael mynediad hawdd i'r compost. Gwnaeth weithio ar goncrit os oes peth dreiniad. Felly, rydym wedi gosod ein compost. Nawr mae angen i roi deunydd ynddo. Fel y dywedodd Richard ynghynt, mae angen deunydd pydradwy a bydd yn pydru'n hawdd ar gyfer compostio. Bydd angen cymysgedd dda o bethau sy'n pydru'n gyflym, sef deunydd sy'n feddal a glib, a phethau sy'n pydru'n araf, deunydd sy'n sych a chaled. Mae cymysgedd o deunydd sy'n pydru'n gyflym fel pilion llysiau ynghyd â deunydd sy'n pydru'n araf fel brigau a dail wedi ei sychu yn berffaith. Dyma Adrian Jones eto.
Nearly all kitchen and garden waste can be composted, although bones and other meat wastes shouldn't really be composted. Woody wastes from the garden can be composted, although these will slow the process down unless you shred them first. Most other kitchen and garden waste can be composted, although it's not really advisable to compost diseased plants in the garden or greenhouse. So if you take those exceptions out, woody wastes, meat and meat products and diseased plants in the garden, you're pretty much able to compost everything else. In addition to these, some paper and card can also be composted, although we'd recommend recycling these where possible. But there will be some paper and card that is probably better off putting in the composter because it's possibly contaminated. A good example would be paper that's been used to wrap up food products, for example. A single compost bin filled with kitchen waste but not garden waste, where there is a separate garden waste collection, could take years to fill up because the material often rots down nearly as quickly as it's added. And so if you're just composting in order not to send the material to a landfill site, don't worry that you'll be producing far too much compost, because in reality you can add material to these bins for years and not ever overfill them. Serious gardeners usually like to have two bins and add garden waste as well as kitchen waste to them. The full bin's left for a few months to mature, while the empty bin is filled up. When the full bin has matured, the compost is emptied and used on the garden, and you start the process over again. So really, it's very straightforward. You take your bin or your bins, you fill them up, and you use the material that you produce. And that's really all there is to it.
Wrth i chi gompostio gartref, mae yna lawer o bethau na ddylent gael ei roi yn eich compost. Mae hwn yn bwysig iawn. Dyma'r pethau na ddylent gael ei roi yn y compost. Bwydydd wedi ei coginio neu wedi ei prosesu, fel llysiau a bara. Cig, pysgod, cynnyrch llaeth, esgyrn. Pethau sydd ddim wedi byw. Braster neu olew. Fedrwch cymysgu gyda'i hadau ar gyfer yr adar. Planhigion heintiedig. Gwreiddiau chwin lluosflwydd fel dant y llew, cwlwm y cythrael, marchwellt a thafol. Lludw glo. Baw anifeiliaid. Chwyn. Canghennau mawr neu foncyffion. Cofiwch, ni ddylech roi y pethau yma yn eich compost cartref. Os hoffech ragor o fanylion am fanteision compostio, ymwelwch â craftamwastraff.org.uk. Mae Shireen Mitchell yn gompostwraig frwd. Pam ei bod hi yn argymell compostio gartref?
Mae fe'n helpu gostwng gwastraff o'r tŷ. Mae'n syml iawn i'w wneud ac mae fe'n ddefnyddiol hefyd. Mae'n helpu'r planhigion yn y gardd, sy'n gret.
Diolch am wrando. Gwrandwch hefyd ar y podcastiau eraill yn y gyfres. Ariennir gan Lywodraeth Cynulliad Cymru.
Dig, 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 digging around. Dig, 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 digging the ground. I got my spade, I got my hoe, I got my rake, and I'm ready to go. Dig.